prediction is that it will go to YouTube, but not Twitch again, at least for not a little while. Oh, hey, it went to both. Okay.
All right.
Give it another shot. It looks like it's on both now.
Okay. So ready again?
Yeah, ready again.
Okay, so we'll just run it back. Restart the intro. All right. So welcome back again, everybody, for yet another week. Just experiencing some mild technical difficulties beforehand. Of course, as always, everything breaks, the moment you start to try to use it. But we are back here with a bunch of new topics. Me and Dylan are actually going to learn some new things about sports today, which is going to be interesting. I know it always seems like, we just know everything. So, but, there's some things we don't, and we're going to go over that. So everything from the USA winning the CONCACAF or CONCACAF,
Oh, you
Danny
had a second chance
so,
to pronounce that, and you still messed it up.
I didn't think about it. Danny pronounced it so well, and now I can't remember how he did it. But they won that, which is amazing. And we're going to learn about the Euros 2020, which is coming up, which is going to be awesome. And we're also going to learn about the Women's College World Series, which is going to be fun as well. And we are bringing on Dylan's girlfriend, Tessa, who is an ex-softball player and knows a lot more about this following it throughout the tournament. I've kind of just watched like game 1 and game 2, so I've know a little bit, but obviously not a ton, nor do I know enough about any of the teams or any of the players to be able to accurately, cover it as a topic. So Tessa will enlighten both of us in that category. And then later on, we'll cover everything ranging from the NFL to Major League Baseball and all the controversy that's happening now with pitchers, boxing, just all kinds of stuff that we're going to cover to kind of go through everything. But so do you want to go ahead and transition us over to our first topic?
Okay, so our first topic is going to be the one that you currently see on the screen. It is going to be the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City that's going on right now. I don't know too much about it except for the couple of games that I had been watching just recently that came up. So I am going to bring on our guest in just a second. I'll switch to a transition. Let her get set up really quickly. It'll just be Dylan on screen, and then we'll come back and she will start her piece with Dylan also following along and learning, and I'll be learning off to the side. So let me do that right now and transition to here.
All right. Well, while I have the screen, actually, I said it on the podcast a couple times ago that the moment my Justin Fields jersey came in for the Bears, I was going to wear it on the podcast. And here we are with, full jersey on, ready to go. It's amazing. Love it. Absolutely great. So I just wanted to, introduce that a little bit while we're going through this transition. Yeah, as far as softball, I don't know a ton. I mean, I understand obviously the basic rules and everything because I played baseball, and softball's a little different, obviously. I'm not going to go out and say that it's the same or anything, but we are going to learn kind of about that, which will be fun. I've been watching for game 1 and game 2 of the World Series. It's been kind of entertaining. It's been interesting. I'm not, new to the whole thing, so it's fun to actually be able to watch something that I normally do not. And it's been interesting to watch for sure. I mean, the games have been exciting, and there's been like plays back and forth that are like, top 10 ESPN top 10 plays going on. So I'm excited and look forward to it. And I think we're ready to go. So introducing Tessa on the podcast. Here we are. Oh,
I don't know if I'm on it. Am I on?
Yes.
You all right. Okay. Hello. I am here tonight to talk about the NCAA Women's College World Series. It's right now taking place. Like Dylan had said, it's out in Oklahoma City. But before we get to where we're currently at in the tournament, I want to talk a little bit about how they got there. So getting to the tournament, national participation, there's 291 NCAA member institutions that sponsor Division I softball teams. So they're all eligible to compete. Out of the 291 programs, that's about 6,000 plus softball student athletes. So crazily enough, there are that many people out there playing softball. So Let's go to the selection process. The Division One Softball Championship provides for a field of 64 teams in the very beginning. They compete for a spot in the national tournament. Of the 64 teams, there's 32 that automatically get a qualification because of their record, who they're playing, that sort of thing. And then there's another 32 that are selected by committee. Of these teams, 16 teams will be seeded, and each of the seeded teams will be placed at one of the regional sites. So they do have a little selection show. It's kind of like March Madness. It's really fun as a softball player to see this take place. This is the Christmas if you love softball. It is the best time of the year. I remember growing up, being 10 years old, coming home from playing my own tournaments and being like, it's time for more softball. So it is the time of the year.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. I love like the selection tournaments and stuff like that because it is super exciting to see where like teams are going to end up and like also just the excitement of like teams that are unranked. Because I know there was I'm sure you'll cover it, but I know there was like a couple surprising like unranked teams that kind of made a lot of noise. So like that's also just fun to see like what teams are getting in and like everything. And that's I didn't even know that they had a selection process. I didn't know that like the World Series was like a full tournament thing until like this year, and then I was kind of paying attention to it and I was like, oh wow, this is like there's like a ton of teams that are competing in this. So
yeah, okay, so I'm glad you're learning. It's a great game. It is, in my opinion, a more fun game than baseball because you see how quickly the game moves with shorter base paths and like shorter distance to a fence. Do you know how often a home run is hit in women's softball? It is very often. Like, I'm pretty sure right now Oklahoma is hitting a home run every 5 at-bats. Every 5 at-bats. Isn't that insane?
Yeah, I was going to say, that was the other crazy thing, too, when I was, like, looking up the stats for the teams. It was, like, crazy, like, the amount of people that was just, like, the home runs. Or, like, I think, like, 4 players for Oklahoma's hitting, like, well over 400. I was like, that's insane.
Yes.
Because, like, being a pitcher's got to be freaking difficult in that just to, like, hit against nonstop, like just onslaught of like talented people. So
definitely. So next I wanted to move on how the regionals work for Division I softball. Like we said before, there's 16 sites. So at each site there's 4 teams and it's a double elimination like mini tournament. And then the 16 winning teams advance to the super regionals. So it's usually that the highest seeded team plays at their home field. So like this year, Oklahoma University, they play out of Norman, Oklahoma, and they hosted like the first site. So it just kind of goes throughout like that. The 16 teams that came out winning their regional round this year were Oklahoma, Washington, James Madison, Missouri, Oklahoma State, Georgia, Florida, UCLA, Florida State, LSU, Arkansas, Arizona, Kentucky, and Alabama. So there's a lot of big names there. A lot of Southern teams are usually out there winning too. So
yeah, I was gonna say I noticed that's like a trend even in just regular college baseball too. That's also a trend where there's like the Southern teams where weather's a little bit nicer. It's easier to kind of play year round or longer year round. There's a lot of that. So that's interesting because there's a lot of teams like that. But then there are some surprises. Like I don't think James Madison's that far south, right? That's
James Madison's in Virginia, so not very south.
Yeah, I was gonna say okay. So
and Washington's usually a pretty big name, and they're up north. So
yeah, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of cool. I wonder if because obviously being able to train outside and everything like that longer for the Southern teams makes more sense. I wonder what that goes into it for Washington. Like I wonder if it's the facilities are different, or if they're able to just kind of accommodate that all year round easier.
So even when I played travel, it was we had an indoor facility, and I assume that these indoor facilities are freaking amazing kind of thing, especially for a team like Washington. They do win a championship every once in a while. It's not like they're out there just playing to play and making it to the tournament, but they win. They have been really good in the past. One of the big names that comes from Washington is Danielle Laurie. She was a great pitcher. I'm not sure if she's still playing professionally, but when I was younger, she was like the big deal from Washington.
Interesting. So what I know you're talking about the super regionals with I think with the 16 teams. Who of those are like the powerhouses that like are the ones that are there every year, and then who are the ones that are kind of like newer to that state that
Sure. So in my watching time, it's you always see Oklahoma. You always see at least one of the Floridas, whether it's Florida or Florida State. But this year, they both came out of their regional round. So you do see a lot of Florida teams. I hadn't seen Kentucky in the tournament before, so it was nice to see someone else from the South at least. Arizona, their coach retired this year, but he had been to the tournament, I think something like 36 times, and they've won a ton of championships. Like even Jenny Finch played for Arizona, and he had coached her. So if you think about it going that far back, like they had been to the championship a bunch of times. A big name in the past years, I think UCLA was our previous champion. They didn't play the championship last year because of COVID, but I believe 2 years ago was UCLA. They won the whole thing, and then 3 years ago was Florida State. So seeing some familiar names, they're usually coming back around. I hadn't seen much from Alabama before. I know that they usually make it pretty far, but I hadn't seen them make it to the championship round before, but that's probably just in my maybe 10 years of watching.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
moving forward into the super regionals, that's down to 8 sites then. So at each site, you have 2 teams playing in a best of 3 tournament format, and then those winners from each site advance to the Women's College World Series. So it kind of just breaks it down, and then you only end up having a couple teams that go to the World Series. I think it's 8. Yeah. So there's 8 winning teams that come from their super regionals into the Women's College World Series, or the WCWS. Our teams this year were Oklahoma, Alabama, James Madison, Arizona, Oklahoma State, UCLA, Georgia, and Florida State. So those are a lot of big names that play good softball and have good sports programs like universally. But then we have our newcomer, James Madison. So that was the big deal this year, was James Madison.
Yeah, and I think I saw that they were like a huge underdog, that because didn't early in that of the 8 teams, their first matchup, didn't they upset somebody in their first matchup, or they upset somebody huge to get there? Something like that,
Yeah.
where it was like really surprising, like they shut them out or something.
Right. I don't remember who they played in the first round. I did watch the game, I promise, but it's escaping me right now.
I say a lot of teams.
There was a lot
games.
of I've been watching this for weeks. It feels like just watching teams get there, and it's been like every day for a couple weeks now, and I'm just kind of, all right, let's get it going. So. Yeah.
I was gonna say I did watch it like a preview where it was showing the 8 teams that were kind of matching up, and it was interesting to kind of hear like what the teams are good at, like special, like obviously players that show, like it's funny because like Oklahoma, they talked about as being like obviously a hitting powerhouse, and that's why it's no surprise that they're here. But then you get teams like Florida State, who they're playing against, who is like a huge pitching, like they had a ton of like amazing pitchers and kind of an all-around offense. And then I was hearing like like Alabama, there was Montana Fouts was a girl that I heard was
we'll
like
get to
huge.
her.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was awesome. I like heard that and I was like, why isn't? I was like, this is awesome. I was like, in an elimination game, that's crazy. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah,
but yes, yeah, there was a lot of interesting. Like I was just hearing about it. I was like, oh, it's pretty cool to see like teams getting there for different reasons. And then also just like I don't know, just generally watching like the pace of play and everything like that. It was so interesting to see like. I don't know, just like because of the field being a little bit smaller and everything like that, infield, it's very hard to like react as quick as they like need to for the way that the ball's coming like out as fast. So it was kind of crazy to watch that too, because then like you watch some of the fielding and some of the plays that were made, and it's like gives you an appreciation for like understanding like how far they have to track to then like how quick they have to react and everything. So it's been fun to watch it. But yeah, these 8 teams. I know James Madison was the one that was like a huge shocker there in that bunch.
Yeah. So now we're going to move into tournament format. This is the WCWS itself. So it is 2 4-team double elimination brackets. So what we see here is that the winners of each bracket then compete in the best of 3 series to determine the champion. So that's where we're at right now in real time. Like the second game of 3 was just played tonight. So we've been seeing some really incredible games this year. And one of the biggest things that has happened is that the first NCAA softball game to air on ABC happened on Saturday, May 29th. So it marks the first time in history that a college softball game aired on one of the major broadcast networks. So, like, that's huge. I know some people will say, oh, it's a slow sports week. Okay, basketball's on. Like, let's watch softball. And
yeah, no, that was sorry, just to cut in real quick. That was what I thought was interesting too. Is I hadn't I'm being a baseball fan. I've heard about the softball World Series and I've seen things about it over the years. But like I will say, this year it has been like really kind of thrown out there as like being a much bigger thing than maybe it has in the past. And like it always happens every year, obviously, but like just as public wide, I feel like the reach that I saw on social media and everything like that was a lot bigger this year than in previous years.
Right. So that was game 2 of the Washington-Oklahoma series. And it was also the return of Jessica Mendoza. And she's like a well-known softball great. Like she played, I think she played at Stanford, I believe. I don't want to. But like I'm pretty sure she played at Stanford. I know she was All-American multiple times, and I'm pretty sure she was one of those in the era of Jenny Finch that went on to play professionally, and that was when professional softball actually like had a bit of a following. And right now it's just college. So at least we have college softball ready for some Olympic softball to come back, but it's out there. We're hoping for growth and hopefully seeing it because it's so fun. Like you watch a college baseball game and it's kind of long and drawn out at some points, but like softball moves quickly and it keeps your attention. And yeah, they sometimes do go to extra innings and it makes it a little bit longer, but they're still only playing 7 innings most of the time. So it's a quick game.
Well, and I thought what was interesting too is watching college baseball versus college softball. One thing I will note is sometimes in college baseball, it almost feels like a team can be like overwhelmingly, good or something like that, where it's almost like not like there's no point in watching the other team because you're like, this team's going to win. Whereas like in college softball, like, I mean, even just looking at this World Series and these 2 games, you saw one game where, the Florida State's pitching, which has been kind of a strength of theirs, wins out in the first game, and then in the second game, Oklahoma's offense storms back to life, which is the thing that they've had all year. So it's kind of interesting to see like where like it's almost like back and forth. Like it's not like you can't be just one-sided. Like you have to actually have a much more complete team to win, which makes it more interesting because then again, I'm not watching like teams just get blown out by other teams that you're like, okay, yeah, this team significantly is better, and it's almost pointless to watch.
There's been a couple of shutouts and there have been a couple of really pitcher dominated games, but those were still pretty exciting too, in my opinion. But I don't know. I think I've had a lot of fun watching everything like happen this year, especially because I felt like I was surprised more than normal. So I don't know. We'll see if that continues. Next, I wanted to talk about Jaden Fields of Georgia. I had a picture of her. Maybe Dylan can bring it up. It's that's not Jaden Fields. The other one.
That's JMU.
Yeah.
But
we can talk about JMU if you want. Okay, you go ahead.
One thing I do want to say actually while he's transitioning this, one thing I thought was interesting was I was watching some of the pitching, man, and it was crazy to watch like it was amazing to watch like the stark change in like speed because like sometimes you get like you'll get in base like NFL you'll get players that or Major League Baseball you'll get pitchers that can throw like 90 something miles per hour, and then their changeups are like in the high 80s or something, so it's really not like a huge difference. But I was watching like a couple pitches from I think it was Sandercock, and I think there was one pitch that she threw that was like a 73 miles per hour. And then like the next pitch was like a 51, and it had like this nasty like curve on it, which I thought was crazy. I was like, man, that like cannot.
And it's at a shorter
easy.
Distance. So you have to think about 70 miles an hour coming at you and you're that close. It's, 30 something feet? I never pitched, so I don't exactly know. But it's a lot closer than a pitching mound, definitely.
Well, and then like I said, to like have the stark change where suddenly there's like noticeable movement on the ball and it's 20 miles per hour slower is crazy for like timing and hitting and everything like that. So that was something I thought was interesting and crazy when I was watching, and something I picked up on. But
I'll talk about I'll talk about pitching a little bit later, but here we finally have up the picture that I was going to reference here. It's Jaden Fields. She played for Georgia. She plays for Georgia. And this is Justin Fields' younger sister. So got your jersey on. I wanted to make sure we reference that tonight. She just finished her redshirt sophomore season, so she'll be a redshirt junior next year. Probably coming back to Georgia. There's not a ton of transfers in softball unless there's a coaching change, but probably coming back for Georgia next year. But the big news about her is that she was sitting the bench for a while. I believe it was the last 9 games. They had chosen a senior over her to play, which sometimes they're more developed, sometimes they're more ready to go. But they brought her back in their super regional game, and she really pushed them through. She hit home runs in consecutive games, and it was just like a game changer. She is basically the reason they made it into the tournament, into the World Series portion. They did end up losing, I think, to both Oklahomas. I'm not sure. I know at least one of the Oklahomas, but they have this picture. It's a tweet that we had shared. It's Justin Fields supporting his sister. So wanted to make sure we talked about that.
I was going to say, because the other thing too is I was surprised by is typically like you get like the when you get siblings, like there's always like the one sibling that's like, you know, like famous, and then they reference the other sibling, and you're like, you know, they might not be as good or something like that. But then, like, I heard that she was like basically, like you said, like the sole reason why they ended up in even winning, and I was like, wow, it's like
she's a great athlete in her own right.
I was gonna say, I was like, man, I was like, what a family! I was like, just both successes,
right? And like, sure, they both look a little down in this picture, but it was a good game. That was a better game. And he does have his Chicago Blackhawks hat on, so I don't know if anybody noticed that. He's repping Chicago already.
I was going to say, the moment I showed this picture, because I actually showed this picture to my dad, the moment I did, he was like, oh, he's got a Blackhawks hat on. I was like, I didn't even notice that, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it on Jaden. The next one that I wanted to talk about was JMU. Here we have a picture of Odyssey Alexander. We will talk about her. But talking about generally, James Madison University was an unseeded team that made it to the semis of the championship. When before this year,